of. Jesus said, "Whosoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken to a wise man who built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock." The rock is the Word of God, the uncompromised Word of God. We're to build our faith. We're to build our families. We are to build our nations on the rock, not the shifting sands of man's philosophies. Founding Father Benjamin Rush stated that the only foundation for a republic is to be laid in religion. And Christianity is the only true and perfect religion. Was our nation founded upon the rock? Well, 93% of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were Christians. 95% of the authors and framers of the U.S. Constitution were Christians. This nation was founded by predominantly Christian men on predominantly Christian principles. We were founded upon the rock. In fact, John Hancock, the first signer of the Declaration, stated it becomes us as Christians to reflect that without his whole blessing, the best of human counsels are but foolishness. John Hancock, by the way, was the only signer of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. Nobody else signed it until August, a month later. That must have been a very tough month for John Hancock because he had signed his death warrant. Wonder if he felt the guys kind of left him hung out in the air there, right? John Hancock, what a guy. The Declaration refers to the biblical Creator as our Creator, as nature's lawmaker, as our supreme judge, and as our divine protector. Patrick Henry stated this nation was founded not by religionists, but by Christians. Not on religion, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. Is that clear enough for everybody? Yeah, absolutely. In Genesis 1, we're told that God created man, male and female, in his own image. The Declaration states that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. You see, these rights come from our Creator. Nobody can take them from us. Our founding fathers understood that our rights come from the biblical Creator. Yet here's another email I received from yet another victim of our rewritten history, and he says, "It's a shame you don't know our history, and you won't get away with your Christian lies." He says the Constitution is a secular document. Well, now that is what's being taught in the schools. So let's see what the facts might have to say. Following the Revolutionary War, the states failed to remain united. So in 1787, a constitutional convention was convened in Philadelphia. The three main reference sources cited by the framers of the U.S. Constitution were, number one, the King James Bible. Number two, the Spirit of the Laws, and the commentaries on the laws of England by Sir William Blackstone, who based his findings on the 10 Commandments of God. These three sources show that the rule of law is based on the never-changing natural law of God's 10 Commandments. That's the reason we're supposed to have equal justice in the United States, is because the laws are supposed to be based on the never-changing 10 Commandments. Now that has changed, and I'll explain why in just a few moments. But the fact of the matter is that the correct context in which we should interpret the Constitution is through the phrase that we are endowed by our Creator. In Exodus, we're told that God gave unto Moses 2 tables of stone upon Mount Sinai, written with the finger of God. Well, Alexander Hamilton stated, "I sincerely esteem the Constitution a system which, without the finger of God, never could have been agreed upon by such a diversity of interests." The U.S. Constitution begins, "We the people," not "I the king," or "I the tyrant," or "we the government," because our founding fathers realized we were endowed with these freedoms from our Creator. The power of the United States is in the people. At least that's the way it's supposed to be. At the Constitutional Convention in 1787, Ben Franklin proposed that each day should begin with prayer to the biblical God. And since that time, every session of Congress has begun with a prayer to the biblical God. Well, until earlier this year when they opened up with a prayer to the false god of Islam. George Washington is known as the father of our nation. He was the first U.S. president. At his inauguration, he ended his oath to office by saying, "So help me God, I'm bending over to kiss the Bible." George Washington proclaimed the first national day of Thanksgiving to the biblical creator. Our second president, John Adams, stated that our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other. It won't work if we don't have strong morals. Now, our rewritten history states that Thomas Jefferson, who was our third U.S. president and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, our rewritten history says that he was a Christian skeptic. But that's not what the facts seem to back up. As president, Jefferson attended Christian church services that were held in the U.S. Capitol building. He wrote the educational plan for Washington, D.C. schools. He used the King James Bible as the primary reading book. He obviously wanted this country built upon Christian principles. In fact, to those who claimed he was against Christianity, he wrote that his views were the result of a life of inquiry and reflection, and much different from the anti-Christian system imputed to him by those who knew nothing about his opinions. Our fourth U.S. president was James Madison, who is known as the author of the First Amendment's religion clause. So he should know if there was some separation of church and state, wouldn't you think? Well, he actually attended church services in the U.S. Capitol building as president, and he promoted the hiring of pastors for both the House and the Senate. Well, what about that constitutional separation of church and state? Well, nowhere in the U.S. Constitution is such a phrase mentioned. In fact, the U.S. Constitution reads in the First Amendment, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." It's clear that the Constitution prohibits the establishment of an official government religion. But at the same time, it leaves religious activities to the discretion of the people of each individual state to decide upon for themselves. This was meant and written to protect religious activities, not to undermine our creation Christian-based freedoms. In fact, James Madison stated, "We have staked the whole future of the American civilization not upon the power of the government, but upon the capacity of each and all of us to govern ourselves according to the 10 Commandments of God." The Declaration, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, quotations and personal writings from our founding fathers all show that they formed us to be one nation under God. It's simply a fact that America's freedoms are based on Christian principles. Our founding fathers clearly intended to keep the federal government out of the church while keeping Christian principles inside of the government, so the government would not become